So welcome to the Community Meetup of the group leaders. And today we are talking about processing payment for group trips. And we have a few guests. The whole show is run by Jen Fay, our CEO and the co-founder. And I'll be helping with the managing the flow a little bit. And Lisa, help me pronounce your last name, please, so I don't misspell it.
Yeah,
Albrecht.
Lisa Albrecht.
Lisa Albrecht is our guest and recent ambassador of YouLi. Thank you very much for that. And Lisa is passionate about retreats and at resorts. Yeah.
Yeah, retreats at resorts.
If you want to tell us a little bit about you, your company, your story.
Yeah, so I've been running retreats for probably about 28 years now, which makes me feel like I was very young when I started running events, which I was about 16. And the past 5 years I've been doing it full time. Left a full-time job as a social worker, which was my only career because I'd run retreats in my holidays. And yeah, so 5 years ago, took the plunge, stepped out on my own. And since that time, it's just been amazing. So I run retreats myself, which are all about self-development and stepping into who you're here to be. But I've also developed this platform called Retreats at Resorts, which is going to be, in the end, a bit like booking.com. That's our vision, that people jump on, go, I want a business retreat in Hawaii, and they'll find what they need, or they want a yoga retreat or an artist retreat. So whatever the topic of their passion is whatever we'll have so many retreats on there that people won't be able to decide very easily. But for me, it's all about bringing people together and making those connections so that the world's a bit of a smaller place, that people have those personal connections with like-minded other people there, but there's those friendships that then last a lifetime. Because if you've been on a retreat, you know that this magical connection can happen with people. But we also have the Ultimate Girls Week Away, which is a 300 women event in Fiji at Plantation Island Resort next February. And Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love and Big Magic, is joining us. So she's coming as a speaker, but she's also coming just to hang out for the week, which is very, very cool. So we've got women coming at the moment from the States, Australia, New Zealand, parts of Asia, parts of Europe, and it won't be long now till all the places are filled up, which is very exciting. So that's Amazing. Me in a nutshell.
Great. So Lisa will be sharing her experience with the retreat organization and payment processing. And Karen, Karen is the walker, as Australians say, right? They call the hikers. But Karen leads walking tours around Australia and Nepal in the Himalayas. Can you want to share your story? Hi.
Yeah, so I run Rare Air Himalayan Travel, and we specialise in trips to Bhutan, mostly walking or trekking tours. We've got some cultural tours as well, but it's just my favourite country to go to, and I really like showing people, what an amazing little place it is, Bhutan. And I only started the company last year. So I've been running lots of trips with the Melbourne Women's Walking Club, but yeah, I've gone sort of professional as a leader. So that's what I'm trying to do. Just I ran my first trip with the company in April, and I've got another one in January, and then April again, and got a few trips going.
Yeah, Karen, I've been really impressed to see how quickly you've ramped up in terms of just being your first year of operations. Seriously, a lot of people get started with just one trip in the first year, and you're just really getting out there, and I'm very impressed with that. So I'm looking forward to hearing your stories through that process.
Yeah. Well, I've got people signed up for the first half of the year. I'm hoping I get more for the second half as well.
Yeah. Well, so today we're going to cover kind of three big areas. One is going to be sort of payment gateways versus sort of direct payments, and then cash flows and kind of how you manage those timelines of getting paid from your customers. And then we'll talk a little bit about some sort of more advanced invoicing and bookkeeping and kind of invoicing for groups within groups, so depending on how large your group is. So we wanted to kind of kick off with the big one, which is payment gateways. So I think certainly I didn't immediately know what a payment gateway was a few years ago, and so I did a lot of research, obviously, to integrate those into the YouLi platform. And so it used to be that you'd have to get a merchant account from your bank, and then people would call you up and you'd process credit cards that way. And these days you can now just connect with one of these global online payment gateways. And so PayPal was the one who sort of made it big, and everyone knows their name. And these days there's now lots of them. So Stripe and Square are kind of the big global competitors now. Those are the ones that we integrate with, and they have their pros and cons. And actually, I believe Liesl uses Square. So I'll give her a chance to kind of talk about why you picked them and how that's working for you.
Look, it's working really well. Why I picked them, I'm not sure. I think initially I got onto Stripe and went, oh, that looks a bit complicated. And then went, oh, let me try this Square one, and went, oh, that's easy to register. Which was probably about maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, but really started using them a lot in the past 12 months. So for registrations for my retreats and for Fiji especially. And so with Fiji, I realized that probably $2 million were going to go through Square. So I just purely rang them up and said, this is what I do. I've had my account with you for a while. This is how much money is going to be going through. So they offer, and what can you do better than the 2.2%? So initially they offered me 1.6% for all direct sales. And now we're just in the process of negotiating that same 1.6% for invoicing, which is great.
Mm. And so, so just to help kind of clarify that for people, the fee that we're talking about here is sort of the credit card processing fee. So all the payment gateways charge a fee, and that'll depend on a lot of different things. It depends on what country your bank account's in, so if it's Australian or US or pounds, and then it also depends on what credit cards you're accepting. And it might depend on whether or not you're processing foreign transactions. So, Liesl, you've actually gotten a flat rate of 1.6 for all cards. So regardless of whether or not they're US or Australian, right?
Yeah, exactly. And because we're charging in Australian dollars, has made it easier rather than multiple currencies. So that's just the way we've chosen to go, is that, everything's priced in Australian dollars. That's what people are paying in, and so that's what they're being invoiced, but also what they're paying when they come directly from the website.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the key challenges for global travel businesses, especially smaller ones, which is that, you'll often have international customers. And so, but as a small business, like, you can't really, accept payment, charge them in pounds and in euros and in US dollars and in Australian. Like, it's just too much financial overhead. So you sort of have to pick one currency, and then everyone pays in that one currency, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, I chose Australian dollars because it's a payment being made to Fiji. So between the Australian dollar and the Fijian dollar, the difference isn't that significant compared to like the Australian dollar and the US dollar, where we would be losing out if we paid in US dollars. So yeah, looking at the currency that you have to pay the bills in, so to speak.
Yeah, and actually I've been speaking to some people who are running trips to the US, and that's one of their key challenges. If they've got customers in Australia and their businesses in Australia, then it would be natural to charge in Australian dollars, but then given the current low exchange rate, they have to charge a lot more in Australian dollars in order to be able to cover those costs and cover the risk that it'll further decline between now and when they pay those bills. So unfortunately, there's not much anyone can do. Like the payment gateways just charge the fees that they charge. And if you are converting from one currency to another, they'll charge a foreign transaction fee. And they'll have whatever spot rate is the rate at the moment. So if it goes down and your money settles the next day, that's the rate that you get. So that's definitely something to sort of keep an eye on if you're handling that sort of multiple currency situation. Yeah. And so Karen, I think you use Stripe, right?
No, I use EFT. So
right.
Yeah, so people just pay directly into my company's bank account. And that's working for me because, so far I've only got people coming from Australia, and actually at the moment they're only coming from Victoria. So that works for me right now, but we'll see how it develops. But I like that. It's interesting, when I pay the money to Bhutan, it has to be in US dollars. But I actually still want to put my prices in Australian dollars because it puts me on the same level as the bigger companies. All their prices are in Australian dollars. It seems like the small boutique ones charge in US dollars, and it's awkward. I think it's awkward to know, what the real price is.
Well, also because depending on what their bank charges, like banks have the worst foreign transaction fees. So if they don't know how to use something like an Oz Forex or TransferWise or one of these new foreign exchange platforms, they're going to get hit with a really high fee if you're charging them in US dollars. So, that's money that like you could be getting instead of the bank getting. Right?
Yeah, true. It's interesting for me because I use Bank Australia and they're a really ethical bank and I want to keep using them. But I am going to talk to them about the fees that I get charged.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good lesson from Liesl to sort of look at, if you can prove like this is how much money I'm bringing in, if you ask, oftentimes they will lower their rates. So I'm inspired. I'm telling everyone that Liesl got a good deal. You should try it.
Bank Australia, they have low fees and they are really ethical. They're great to deal with. So we'll see whether
Yeah. Yeah, and the direct payment or EFT model works differently in every country, and so that's something like it's really easy in Australia, but Americans have a really hard time doing bank transfers from bank to bank. So there's a new thing called Venmo, which I think is becoming popular in the United States. That's a way to transfer money. Yeah, that's a lot more cost effective, but otherwise it's often there can be like wire transfer fees or otherwise it's challenging to actually move money between bank accounts in the US. So that's why Americans often prefer credit cards, just because it's just simpler for them.
Here's a question. Is it possible on YouLi that you can have a choice of how you pay?
Yeah, and so we do allow you to offer credit cards and the direct transfer option that you use. Okay. And so we do that for cruise subscriptions and above. So on Guide, you can only do credit cards. But yeah, because we actually think that you do want to offer both. And we're going to be rolling out a surcharge feature as well, so that you can pass on the credit card fee. So you can kind of create an incentive for them to do the direct transfer because it'll be $50 cheaper or whatever. Yeah. And so just as a way of kind of hinting to them like, hey, it costs me more if you pay with credit card, so it'll cost you more. But that'll be up to you whether or not you want to bake it into your overall price or if you want to expose it kind of like the airlines do. If you've seen that, when you click to pay, they say, you know, if you pay by direct transfer, there's no fee, but if you pay by credit card, it's like a 1.5% fee usually. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So that's about payment gateways. And if you want to talk a little bit about the possibilities of how the payment gateways may charge you and how it affects your cash flow as a company.
Yeah, well, so we have an example here. This is just contrasting, and we just pulled this from Retreat.guru because it's just one of the other platforms that's out there. It's a lot of text here, but basically the idea is that if you use their payment gateway, which is integrated into their platform, so it's kind of bundled, then they only pay out 50% of the funds when received, and then 50% after the retreat begins. So they do this because they're the payment gateway, and this is their way of protecting against fraud. And then they only send money through twice a month. So, you know, for a lot of companies, this is not reasonable for their cash flow and for handling their payments out to their suppliers. And so this is one of the reasons why we actually have unbundled the payment gateway. So we don't offer payment gateway services directly. We just connect you to either Stripe or Square or PayPal, or allow you to do the direct payment to your bank account yourself. So we just sort of step out of that and say, look, we're the technology that helps you manage this. But in terms of fraud protection, that's going to be handled by your gateway. So that's going to be your Stripe or your Square. So as you build a reputation, your settlement happens faster and faster. So the great thing about being separated is that you don't get treated like everybody else. Like, you know, so Liesl, you've been doing this for 28 years. You've been with Square for 4 years. So you have a reputation, which means that they're much less likely to decline a card. Whereas somebody who's using a gateway integrated into their platform like Retreat.guru or WeTravel, you're getting bundled into all the people who've just put up their first retreat and have never, you know, have no reputation at all. And so what we've heard from people is oftentimes their cards will get declined, their customers' cards will get declined as fraud protection, and it reflects really poorly on their business, even though that's actually about the Retreat.guru gateway, it's about the WeTravel gateway. So that's why we think it's better for you to control your own reputation and have your own account with Stripe or Square. So that way you don't get bundled in with everybody else. Now, it doesn't mean you have to build your own reputation, but of course, you're going to build a good one because you guys are, you know, you run your businesses with integrity. So that's going to pay off because you're going to go from settlements in 7 days to settlements in 3 days once you've demonstrated that you don't have chargebacks on your account. So, so that way we sort of skip all of this, and we've kind of put that into your hands to control. And of course, if people want to sort of speak to us independently about that, we always are happy to chat. So moving on to cash flows and timelines. So as Ben Southall, one of our other ambassadors, say, cash is king. So this is one that I know is quite important, and which is one of the reasons we know that kind of getting bookings in early is really key, because that kind of gets your deposits flowing, and you know that you have your minimum so you can run the trip, right? So we've recently rolled out coupons. So this is available for our premium account holders. And so you can actually offer like an early bird pricing with a coupon code. And Ben just recently ran that for one of his big expeditions. It's about $11,000 US. And so he knew that was a really big price tag. And so in order to make sure that he met his minimums, he ran coupons. He sent them out to his VIPs for the first 2 weeks, and then he closed that coupon. That was a higher one. And then he ran a second stage coupon for people within his Facebook group, and that was a slightly lower coupon. And between those two, he was able to meet his minimums on the trip. So that can be a really useful way of kind of using discounts on a very high price trip to kind of bring that in and meet your minimum. Have you guys ever used coupons or discounts for early bird pricing?
No.
I've done discounts for early bird pricings, but yeah, never like coupons.
Yeah. And so, it's one of those things everybody's gonna, decide, because of course you need to kind of up your price to kind of get that discount in there, right? So,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of whether or not that's within the model that you've got, but that's one way to kind of drive early bookings. So one question that comes up a lot is, how much should I charge for deposit? And I know, Liesl, you charge $500 for the Fiji retreat. How did you come to that number?
I think initially it was, what's an easy amount for people to go, yep, I've got that. What I found is, particularly in the Australian market, people like payment plans. So if we can offer a deposit, then a payment plan, that works really well in Australia. In the States, people pay up front a lot more. Which I found quite interesting. But how I came up with 500, I just thought it was an accessible amount. If people can afford to think, oh, I'm going to go to Fiji, then they should be able to put their hands on $500.
Yeah. And do you feel like that covers the expenses that you have initially, like the initial cash outlay that you have as a business for that trip?
Yeah, so yes, it does. With other retreats, it might be that we need to pay the resort, say 2 nights accommodation per person as the deposit, which that then covers that as well.
Yeah, nice. And Karen, you also charge a $500 deposit?
Yeah, I thought it was a doable amount as well. And at the moment, it doesn't cover my expenses, but that's because I've got a lot of expenses as a new business, and I'm going to Bhutan more often, and it costs me money to go to Bhutan too. So yeah, it's not covering, but it will. In the long run, it will.
Once you get past those initial setup costs, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. It looks like 500 is the magic number.
Yeah, but also my final payment has to be in 3 months before the trip. So it's not, a month or 6 weeks, it's 3 months, because that's when I send the money to Bhutan.
Okay. So your payment plan is basically deposit plus balance due 3 months prior.
Yeah.
And Liesl, what kind of payment plans do you typically do?
Yeah, so our favourite one is the deposit, then 3 installments. So for Fiji, the balance is due 6 weeks before, and for other trips, it's a month out.
And do you vary your payment plan, or do you have the same one for everybody?
I try to have the same one for everybody, but if people are like, oh, I'd rather pay monthly, or can I pay in 2 installments, then we can vary it.
Yeah, and do you charge an admin fee when you do that?
Not really. So we just set it up on Square. We add on the Square processing fee, and we say that on the invoice that, plus the 1.6 processing fee. And yeah, we factor admin costs into the cost of the retreat. So we don't add any on at the end except the processing fee.
Nice. Well, and then of course the thing that we all dread is the potential for a refund demand. So I think you both have stories on this. Karen, do you want to tell your refund story?
Yeah, I had someone cancel within a month of the trip in April. She was in a car accident, so she had a really good reason for pulling out of the trip. But because I'd had my terms and conditions done by then, so that was really, really good. And I was able to say, I can't give you any money back because in my terms and conditions, this is what it says. You're not entitled to the money back. You'll have to take it up with your travel insurer, which she did. And I had to provide lots of documentation, and I kept all the documentation. Actually, I've put it in a folder on my computer, cancellation documents. So if it happens again, the letters are all written, everything's there. All I have to do is sort of change the dates and amounts and things. So I know I was really, I read over it again. I thought, oh, they were really well-written letters, actually. It sounded really, very professional. So,
And it worked. So she got her money back.
she got all her money back. Yeah.
Nice.
So Karen, Karen,
Go ahead,
it's Kim here.
Yeah.
So showing the insurance company your terms and conditions wasn't enough. You had to provide extra.
Yeah, no, they wanted proof that she couldn't transfer her deposit to, or her fee that she paid. She couldn't transfer it to another trip, and they wanted information. What else did they want information about? Just sort of acknowledgement of just acknowledgement of why she couldn't go on the trip. And
okay, yeah.
Yeah, if you contact me, I can send you the documents if you want.
It's okay, thanks.
Yeah, so I think this is something that travelers don't always realize, you know, when people talk about, oh, you need to buy travel insurance, and being able to say, well, look, if you got into an accident or something like that, it means that, you know, you can claim this back, and you know, so emphasizing to them that this is really beneficial for them. And I've heard this story now a few times, and so I am now a firm believer in travel insurance. So I always buy it, and it's actually one of our default tasks in all of our trips to book travel insurance. And a lot of our clients make it a required step. So, you know, they have to do their waiver form, and they have to buy travel insurance and upload a copy of that as part of their pre-trip tasks. So yeah, important for you and important for them. Yeah.
I do think it's easy for me to sell travel insurance to people, or sell the benefit of it, because we're going to the Himalayas, we're going to be walking in the Himalayas. So it's easier to say things can happen, you know, in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
So I think it was easy to insist that people have travel insurance. And because
that's interesting. Do travel insurance companies have special terms for the Himalayas, or is there something extra that people have to buy?
Well, you have to buy extra. For all of our trips, they all go above 3,000 meters in altitude. So most policies don't cover above 3,000 meters. You have to get an upgrade.
This kind of extreme sports policy.
People have sent through their certificate of insurance, and I've gone over it and said, no, not good enough, you know, and had to get back to them and say, contact your insurer. This is not going to cover you above 3,000 meters.
Yeah. Interesting.
And those are tricky things to find in the fine print if you don't know to be looking for them, right?
Covermore, actually, they say that their policies cover you above 3,000 meters, but you can't find it anywhere in the policy writing. It's just impossible. So I always tell people, if they go with Covermore, to get it in writing in an email, that they will cover above 3,000 meters.
Good to know.
Tricky, yeah. And Lisa, I think you said you had a refund story as well.
Yeah, so I was taking a group to Vietnam, and I was at the hairdressers the day before the trip, and got this frantic call from one of our participants. So it was a mother and daughter that were coming, and their son had her son had had an accident, and they were wanting to pull out. And it was the same as Karen. I had to provide, you know, letters to the insurance company, same sort of thing, that it wasn't transferable, and they got all their money back as well. But she was a woman I had to really push to get travel insurance, because it is a compulsory part of coming on our international retreats, is that they do have travel insurance, and we encourage them to get it as soon as they pay their deposit. And that just, in case something happens, you know, we had another woman that developed breast cancer after she booked and paid for her trip, and she had, you know, really good travel insurance, and we also rang Jetstar. Shout out to Jetstar. They refunded her airfare straight away.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's challenging as small businesses to you need to hold firm on your refund policies, but it can be heartbreaking the stories that you hear. So it's really good to know that you can stand firm on your policies, but know that they're still getting compensated. So hooray for insurance! Something I never thought I would say.
And
the terms and conditions, having your terms and conditions done. Oh, what a lifesaver.
Yeah. Do you include the travel insurance is compulsory as part of your terms and conditions? Or
yeah. In fact, when the lawyer wrote up the terms and conditions, I actually sent back a few. I wanted some changes, and that was one of them, that they had to have travel insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also going to say that I also encourage people, like if we're doing retreats in Australia, to look at like local travel insurance. I know of a woman that went on a trip to the top end of Australia, so it was camping, and day 3 she got sick, and so she had to leave the tour. She had to fly from somewhere back to Darwin, so it cost her like thousands of dollars in the end, plus she lost the money from the trip. Whereas if she had paid the maybe $60 for local travel insurance, she would have got all that refunded. So really, it's not a necessity on our Australian retreats, but it's recommended.
Yeah.
No,
So good value.
Another thing that I've noticed is that if your retreat or tour is offering particular kind of activities like hot air ballooning or caving, or just to be really clear that participants have, as you said, discussed that with the insurer and actually get some kind of email confirmation that they've got the cover, because that's
extras.
Yeah. And how do you guys counter, like, do you get people who say, oh, well, my credit card has insurance?
Oh, yes. Yes. All the time.
Yeah.
And how do you counter that?
I recommend insurers to them, and none of them take my advice. They all say, oh, well, I can get credit cards, I can get travel insurance through my bank and through this and that. I say, make sure it covers you for over 3,000 metres.
That's exactly right. Make sure you read the fine print.
Yeah, definitely.
And I read their fine print. I make them send it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
Because most people don't read it.
Yeah, well, and because who wants to read it, right? But it's important stuff. And and I think adventure travel is growing like crazy, and I think it's awesome and it's exciting, but there are dangers to being above 30,000 meters. There are dangers to walking in the woods, in any country, and you can just get sick regardless of where you are in the world. So I remember when we did Kilimanjaro, we had to get extra, I think was it called flying doctors or something similar to that, but so that when we were both on the mountain but also on safari, there's a special sort of group that will actually rescue you. Like they'll send a plane out to wherever you are in the Serengeti and pick you up and take you out. And I was like, yeah, that's worth an extra $15. Oh yeah, we buy that. And thankfully we didn't need it. No wildebeest attacks or anything like that. But it just was such an extra peace of mind. It sort of felt like a no-brainer. So
yeah, Jen, that brings up another point about backup plans. Lisa and Karen, do you have that in writing, what your backup plan is, or do women ask what happens in case of emergency?
I've never been asked that. We talk about if particularly acts of terrorism now. Unfortunately, it's something we need to think about. And so we put about that what embassies will go to, what, the best practice model, I guess, is in that instance. But I don't think I've ever actually had anybody ask me it.
Oh, okay.
I've been on a trek in Bhutan when 2 people dropped out and they had to have a guide go back with them. And also when they were back in Paro, they then had, because you can't travel by yourself in Bhutan, they had to pay extra to have another guide and a driver accompany them. But they had a ball. They both dropped out at different time, but they ended up, you know, hanging out together and having a great time.
Cool.
And so was that part of the plan? Like you knew when they said, hey, we need to go, you were like, yep, no worries. Here's the plan. This is what you need to do.
I wasn't, that was a World Expeditions trip. So I wasn't running that one, but it was good to see what happens. You get walked down with with one of the crew, and then you have to have another guide.
Yeah, and I suppose that is very country specific, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, so moving on to this, we just wanted to put this up really quickly. It's a bit of an overwhelming slide, but just to help understand in terms of cash flow, another thing to think about is obviously we're a platform. We provide sort of an all-in-one service where we bring everything together. And so in order to pay for the software that we provide, our clients can either pay a software subscription, which is sort of a fixed fee. And the example on the left-hand side kind of shows, like in this example of about 10 trips per year, that ends up being about sort of $3,300 for that flat version. Whereas if you are running the same number of trips and doing a sort of booking fee model with us, where you're at a 2% level, then that can be sort of $7,000 to $9,000 depending on the price per ticket. And so we believe that software should scale with you, and so that's why we offer the flat fee subscriptions. Now, obviously, it makes sense as you scale, right? So if you're running 10 trips a year and you have the cash flow that supports paying a fixed fee, then it is hands down the best financial decision. But we recognize that some people are in a position where they're not quite scaling there yet, or maybe their cash flow doesn't allow for a fixed payment. And so that's why we allow you to sort of start on the booking fee 2% model. And then over time, as you scale up and you have that consistency of cash flow, you can switch on to the annual subscriptions and really decrease your cost of software. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind when you're looking at your costs and your expenses, is to sort of see if you can afford from a cash flow perspective to pay the lower cost of the subscription, or if you need to just pay the higher percentage approach until you get to the scale where you can switch. So just wanted to kind of put that out there. And of course, we have 3 plans that let you do that. So our guide is that 2% booking fee that is on top of any credit card fees. That varies based on whether you pick Stripe or Square, as we've discussed earlier. And then you can move up to Crew, which gives you a lot more functionality, including Teams. And then you're paying a fixed price per month and a tiny booking fee if you do credit cards. And then ultimately you can drop that to 0% on our venture subscription. So if there's any questions on that, people can certainly reach out to us to talk about which plan might work for their business. And our final topic is complex invoicing. I know, exciting. So these kinds of trips are complicated. You're talking about, especially, Liesl, you're running a trip, 300 attendees coming from all over the world. So you've been smart. You've picked one currency. So that's one way of sort of reducing your headache in terms of bookkeeping. But if you're offering different payment plans, then that creates some administrative work. And so, just recognizing that you need to find tools that support you in whatever it is that you're going to offer to your clients. So I think Square is working really well for you, Liesl, in terms of making that as painless as it can be.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so do they allow you to also, do you do it per person, or do people ever book together in pairs or?
No, they don't. We do it per person because we need separate registrations for each person. So yeah, I think I've got it down to 2 minutes per invoice now.
Nice. Very efficient.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we offer through YouLi is the ability to actually create little subgroups, the groups within groups on the platform. So if you're running a trip with, let's say, 40 people and some of them are families or couples or friends, you can actually group them together and they can pay together. So that way they get one invoice, and then on the back end, you see it as sort of as individuals. So we sort of help you provide the service that they want, because quite often couples pay together or families pay together. And so, but then of course, there's another challenge when you're integrating with gateways, which is that gateways take processing fees. And part of that processing fee also includes GST. So if you're operating in Australia, you can claim that back, but only if you can account for it. And that can sometimes be like $2 here, $3 here. So it becomes quite the bookkeeping nightmare to track that down, account for it, and then claim it back from the government. So one of the things that we're implementing in partnership with Ben Southall is an integration into Xero. So that way you can click from YouLi and push all of the payments that have come in through YouLi and just create invoices that match up all the Stripe or Square processing fees and the GST as a line item, so that your accountant can just quickly say, yep, got all of the GST accounted for all of these payments that have come through the gateways. So do you guys, who uses Xero here?
I do. Hi everyone, sorry I'm late.
Hi.
Oh, hello.
Hi, technical issue at my end, so unfortunately I've missed a lot.
That's all right. We've recorded it, so we'll send it out afterwards and you can catch up. But
Right.
But yeah, so on the Xero side, we're excited to be looking at an integration that should make it so that your travelers basically get their invoice through YouLi, and then you get an invoice created inside Xero for your own accounting purposes.
Right.
And it will actually break it down so that you can, account for Stripe or Square processing fees and your GST, and if there's a YouLi booking fee as well, that'll all be kind of broken down. So if anyone is interested in being part of that rollout, please let us know, and we'll we'll work with you when we're rolling that out to get your feedback on all of that. Does anyone who doesn't use Xero?
Me.
We don't.
Yeah, I don't.
What do you guys use?
We use Wave, that's TripAssistant.
Wave? Yeah. Karen?
Spreadsheet.
I'm not using anything.
Oh. Liesl, same thing?
I was forced to, I had a book. I then transferred to doing it on a spreadsheet. So that's a huge step.
Fair enough. Well, as you guys kind of get to the level where, it makes sense to be using something like, so Wave, QuickBooks, Xero, MyOb. So there's, lots of choices. So we're going to be kind of rolling out integrations with them as, as customer demand kind of requires. But
Right.
I think one of the challenges when you're using a payment gateway is that you charge 3 people $500, and that all comes in, and then the gateway takes their cut. And so what settles is, instead of $1,500, you get, $1,400, let's say, right? More likely like $13.98 and 30 cents, right? So that can be really hard for you to account for in your bookkeeping software, or even in your offline books, because now you've got this weird lump amount that's hit your bank account that doesn't match up to what you've actually charged people, right? So so that's what we're trying to fix, is really improving visibility into that, so that you can say, okay, right, so these 3 payments came in, so that's what this lump that settled into my bank account is actually these 3 people's deposits. So we're trying to make that easier for you guys to visualize, both within the platform, but also as an integration into the accounting software.
Great.
Yeah, so you know, a lot of complexity there because
Yeah.
the world is complex.
Yes, it is.
But I'm impressed that you guys are still able to sort of do it outside of the accounting software. That's
I've got the direct deposit, so it's a bit easier anyway. I get the 500, you know, there's no fees.
true.
Yeah.
And they come in separately, right? Because you're not using the gateway, so then you don't have that lump problem where they settle out.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, and so this is the downside, right? So payment gateways are really convenient for travelers to pay, right? And they really like them. It gives them a sense of confidence that they are protected. It also means they don't have to have the cash in their bank accounts to pay, but it creates an administrative burden for you guys to accept credit cards. And so, so Karen, if you can hold on to not accepting credit cards, do that. But
no one's complained.
Sorry?
No one's complained yet, so.
That's great. Yeah. And so, Liesl, do you offer different pricing based on credit cards versus direct payments?
Look, most choose to pay through the gateway. I just take off the processing fee if they direct credit.
So you just reimburse them that fee if they pay directly?
Yeah. I just invoice them for just the amount.
You don't add on.
Okay.
I thought was I'd add on.
Not if they're just direct crediting into my bank account.
Oh, okay.
Because
we've
just
charged them differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you invoice in that case when they're doing a direct payment? Where do you send that invoice out of?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm looking at you, but you can't tell that. Yeah.
I know, right? I have an invoicing system just set up through Word. And I just put it into that and send it with the bank account details.
Yeah.
Because we've built in admin fees to our overall retreat costs, we only add on the processing fee when it's been done through Square.
So Square doesn't have an invoicing system?
They do, but it's not for, well, it might have, but I haven't found it. But it's just for payment through their gateway. If people want a direct credit into my bank account, then that's when I invoice them separately.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know, nobody's mentioned PayPal. I'm interested to know why Square and Stripe and not PayPal.
So PayPal is slightly more expensive, but you know, certainly you can use PayPal, and some of our clients do offer that as an option. And in some emerging markets, it's the only option. So you know, you only have the luxury of picking Stripe or Square if you're sort of in a developed financial market. I had a really unfortunate chat from someone in Uganda who was like, hey, how do we accept credit cards? And I was like, even PayPal has pulled out of Uganda, so there's nothing we can do. So you do have to, it's basically based on what country you're in, which payment gateways are available to you, and then it's based on what fees they charge in the different countries and what features they offer. So, you know, Liesl's picked Square because those features suit her the best. We do find, you know, Stripe is a pretty straightforward one for us, but, you know, which is why it's our default, but it's just because it's sort of easy to use from a connection perspective. Like you can set up an account right away, you can start accepting payments right away, and then they review after the fact. So some gateways will actually make you go through an audit process before you connect, whereas Stripe and Square do not. You can just create an account. And then they basically take a look at your first charges, decide whether or not you're a legitimate entity, and either they shut down your account or they warn you or whatever. So that, whereas I think sometimes I'm trying to remember. I think PayPal had a little bit more of an onboarding process. Like I think you have to, I think it's harder to get started as a merchant on PayPal, or at least it has been in the past. So, which is why they've developed a reputation with payers. Like customers are really like PayPal because there's that assurance. Like PayPal will basically get your money back if you complain.
Yeah, they have that resolution center.
Yeah, well, that's great for customers, but it's not great for merchants.
No,
Right?
it's not. And Jen, I'd be interested to know the conversion rates, the currency conversion, if Square, Stripe and PayPal all have a very similar conversion rate, whether
that is
PayPal is
really good
the expensive
question.
one out of the three. Because it's really the conversion rates that get you.
Yeah, I actually don't know. Lisa, have you found that, like, have you been aware of what the conversion rate is in Square when your customer's paying in US dollars?
No, I don't actually know because it just comes to us as Australian dollars.
PayPal actually just recently introduced the new conversion rates, and they're pretty high on the customer side. It's like that's why in the US, at least, everybody switches to Venmo, because Venmo allows you to accept in whatever currency, and PayPal only allows you to accept payments in your home currency, which means the customer has to pay the conversion rate.
Right. Yeah. So.
Venmo.
Venmo, yeah, that's the American one, but you have to have the US bank account for Venmo.
Oh, good.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of new things popping up. And so one of the things that we offer using the direct payment feature and YouLi is, like, if you have a Venmo account, you can just put instructions there and point them at Venmo and go there. And then the processing fees there are relatively low. And as Vika was saying, you can accept payments in multiple currencies, which is similar to TransferWise, is a global platform that kind of allows you to have bank accounts in multiple currencies. So that's something we do when we are getting paid in US dollars and we don't want it to settle to Australian yet. We have it, we direct that to our TransferWise account. So that's, but that's for direct payments, not for credit card processing. So when you're working with these payment gateways, if you charge in Australian dollars and your customer is paying with a US dollar card, they pay the foreign transaction fee. And so that's their expense, and you just get the amount that you've charged. In some cases, now Stripe in Australia will actually charge different rates depending on whether or not it's a domestic or an international card, but they don't do that in other countries. So you gotta, you gotta check. Depends on which country, which home country you have for your gateway account. And I'm trying to remember this other, basically, if where you're going to get hit with foreign transaction fees is if you get paid in Australian, but your suppliers are US, you're going to have to convert to pay your US dollar suppliers. That's when you're going to get hit with foreign transaction fees. And then that's going to be through either your bank or whatever transfer platform you use, like Oz4X or TransferWise, or, you know, there's a bunch of them out there. But these are all things you have to sort of map out, like, where's your money coming in? What currencies is it coming in? If it comes directly, if it comes through a gateway, how are you paying it back out? So every business needs to map this all out and make sure they have all of the pieces balancing, because otherwise you'll get hit with surprise fees somewhere along the way in that cash flow.
Wow. I know one I guess mistake we've made in pricing out the Ultimate Girls League Away is we're paying for our keynote speaker in American dollars, and we worked it all out at the time but didn't allow for the dollar to drop at all. Didn't even think of that. So lucky I'd budgeted extra money in other places to allow for that, but thinking, oh, okay, let's add $50 on per person to allow for that exchange rate issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, this is a new phenomenon, I think, in the sense that it used to be, it was big global multinationals that had to face the sort of you know, fluctuations in currencies and stuff, and small businesses just operated in their own countries, and so it didn't matter. But now we're small businesses that are operating globally, and so now we have to manage the risk of the fluctuations of global currency markets, which is, you know, an interesting business risk. And what I've seen is every client manages that differently. But, you know, some of them are just like, well, I only get paid in US dollars because that's kind of the currency of travel and it's the most stable one. But some of them say, yeah, but I'm operating in Australia and my customers want to pay in Australian. So they operate in Australian and they just charge more if their suppliers expect US dollars. And so, like Liesl said, you just sort of put the contingency into your pricing.
Yeah, that would be me.
Is there a cryptocurrency for travel on the horizon, I wonder?
Sorry?
A cryptocurrency for travel on the horizon.
Well, there's actually an Australian company called Travel by Bit, which is a Bitcoin-based travel booking platform. So I think people are trying to make Bitcoin a currency that, you know, people can use to purchase travel. But the problem there is, you know, we're talking about mitigating the risk of currency fluctuations. Like Bitcoin is fluctuating like crazy.
Wow.
So, you know, it's like today maybe you want to get paid in Bitcoin, but maybe not tomorrow.
Maybe not next week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but that is the answer long term, right? Is a global cryptocurrency that's stable. That would be the ideal.
I think doing refunds with the Bitcoin would be awful as well.
Oh, it'd be a nightmare, yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because the way that Bitcoin works is that you basically pay a fee to the processor who writes the update to the blockchain. So that fee can fluctuate. So you get, depending on how many people are offering the service at that time, it can be either high or low. You never know how long it's going to take. So yeah, I would say at this stage for small businesses, Bitcoin is not a risk mitigation strategy. But I really wish, like when we started YouLi, Bitcoin was just getting kind of mainstreamed as a topic, and I looked into it and I was like, this would be perfect. We need a global currency for travel. And then I looked into it and I was like, oh, this, you know, people can't buy into it safely. You can't be sure your money is going to be safe. I mean, these Bitcoin sort of gateways get hacked, and there's no financial regulation on any of it. So it's just incredibly unsafe. So you would never want to recommend to your customers to buy Bitcoin. Like that would just be a really bad thing to advise. So I'm hoping maybe 10 years from now, we'll have a sort of travel Bitcoin that we can all use. But for now, we have to struggle with the current state of affairs and hope that the Australian currency gets strong again someday.
Yes.
Jen, can I ask, with the direct deposits on your platform, can we make international transactions? You know, with the
you can provide instructions for like a Swift wire transfer. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Or the easier way that we mentioned earlier was the TransferWise. Yeah, is the.
Yeah. So, and if you don't happen to have a US dollar bank account, you can actually set one of those up through TransferWise for free. And I believe they're actually an Australian-based company. Well, anyway, they're ASIC regulated, so so you can check them out. TransferWise to set up a US dollar account, and then basically what you're doing is pushing the burden onto your traveler, if they are Australian, to give you US dollars, and the cost of converting their Australian to US becomes their cost. But if you have US customers, that can be really the best way is to tell them to transfer into a US bank account, and that's something you can get through TransferWise, which is relatively recent. For a long time, you had to have an entity in the United States in order to hold a US bank account, US dollar denominated bank account. So that is changing, which is really exciting.
Great news.
Well, any other stories that you guys want to tell in terms of either good or bad experiences with payments?
Probably one, you know, really highlighting your terms and conditions. I ran a retreat last year in Hawaii, and one of the women who was a repeat customer of mine left the retreat because she couldn't get on with one of the other participants. So really making sure those terms and conditions, and she wanted money back, and it was really quite a logistical nightmare. But because I had all the terms and conditions very clear, I have a process. If something like that happens, so I've got paperwork, I've got forms, I've got all those sorts of things. I had her write out an account of what happened. But just having those refund policies really strict, not only before the trip, but also during the trip.
Yeah.
Because you never know what's going to happen.
Can I interrupt here? I'm actually at the point of T&Cs, and I've just happened to get a lawyer to look over it, because I've, of course, gone on websites and look at different travel sites. And it is a bit tricky because we, you know, the average age of the person we're with, I mean, people will have their own insurance, but I'm, you know, I was thinking about it and thinking there's all sorts of things that can come up, as you say. If someone leaves, how do we cover ourselves? Someone has a fall, I guess that's insurance, it's up to them. Medical conditions, all that sort of thing. And I'm going to ask you, did you get a lawyer to look over your T&Cs or?
I had a lawyer for mine. I think for your own peace of mind.
Yeah.
Just so you know what you're giving out is legal, really.
Yeah, I had a lawyer gave me advice to get my T's and C's done by a lawyer. She said that if the lawyer does it, then if anything comes up, then some of the burden falls on the lawyer rather than on you. Yeah, I had it all written up by the lawyer.
Did you? Well, we've got a lawyer, but he's not charging us. It's a bit
nice
pro quo. So, you know, but I just looked at what he sent back and I thought he didn't change much. So either we're really good at it, or I'm still a bit nervous about it. Like, do we need a specific travel, someone who's done it before, blah, blah, you know, that knows what they're talking about. Yeah. Anyway, look, it's interesting.
Karen, could you recommend the one that you've used?
His name was Rahul Kumar from Allied Legal.
Okay.
He was good. And the other good thing about me not dictating to him was that he gave me a different perspective on the T&C. So he thought of things that I hadn't thought of. And then I was able to change some of the things that I thought were more specific to my company. So it was good. It was worth the money, actually.
Definitely.
I paid I think $1,700 for the terms and conditions, and I paid another $600 for the waiver form.
Yeah.
And that was money well spent, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've got them, you know, I've got them for forever now. I don't have to do them again.
Yeah, got it. All right.
Definitely.
Thank you. And what was his surname? How do I spell it?
Kumar, so Kumar. Rahul, so it's Rahul, Kumar from Allied Legal.
Yep, got that. Okay.
And another good lawyer is Michelle Whitehead.
Yep.
She's really good and on the ball as well.
Yeah, okay. And where's she?
She is, I think she's in Sydney.
Good. I'm in Sydney.
Ah, cool.
And she's
Rahul's in Melbourne.
Okay.
But I've never met him. I did it all totally by email, but I've never met him.
All right. Michelle Whitehead, is she the law firm?
She works for herself.
Okay. All right, no problems. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. So, well, thank you guys so much for joining us to talk about this. It's obviously the topic, you know, in the sense that without getting paid, none of the rest of it matters. And so, you know, it comes in like, do you accept credit cards? If you do, what payment gateway do you select? What kind of payment plan options do you give them? And that'll be based on the software in terms of whether or not you can handle the admin of that. Do you offer coupons? Do you, what's your refund policy? And make sure your terms and conditions are quite clear. I think that's come up a lot in our discussion today. So that would be my big takeaway that I'll probably share most with people is get your T's and C's locked down really well, and then make sure that travel insurance is part of the T's and C's. Make sure that your travelers buy it, and if you can, review to make sure it's the right one so that they are covered, because when something goes wrong, you know you can hold firm to your terms and conditions, keep the money so you don't have to be out of pocket, but they will still be made whole by their travel insurance, assuming you can provide the documentation that they need. So that's really heartening to hear that that your experiences have been positive in the sense that travel insurance companies, given the right paperwork, will actually reimburse. So that's been my experience as a traveler too.
If you just change your mind, they won't reimburse. You have to have pretty good reasons. For
Right.
So,
yeah,
that person who didn't get on with the person in the retreat, they probably weren't going to get reimbursed.
Right, that's interesting. Very good
And
point.
I actually say that in some of my copy is that, you know, you can't get a refund for just simply changing your mind.
No.
So are there insurance companies you partner with, like specifically knowing that they provide good service to travelers?
Not
Something
yet.
we're looking into?
Yet, but
I've been looking into Nomad Travels, I think it is. So
World Nomad?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
That's the one we're affiliated with, is World Nomad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love World Nomads because it's so straightforward, the website.
Yeah, that's what I really liked.
Yeah, it's great. But nobody takes me up on it. They all get their own.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they get it through their credit cards.
Yeah, that's right. They're just going totally by price. They're saying, oh, well, I can get it for $100 cheaper, you know, somewhere else.
Yeah, but is your medical unlimited? For $100 cheaper.
Yeah, when you're laying somewhere wanting to be rescued by helicopter, you would pay $1,000 to be rescued.
Yeah,
right? So,
that's right.
Totally.
So $100 up front is much better. I suppose it's one of those challenges, like you don't want to scare people, but you also want to kind of, you know, emphasize how important it is.
It's true. Actually. You don't want to scare them.
But I guess it's sort of maybe telling the positive stories of, you know, I've found, you know, sometimes things go wrong. Like with this client that I had, their son had an accident, so they couldn't make it. And so thankfully their travel insurance covered that, but that was only because they bought from this company or something. You know, maybe it's about telling that positive story.
If you need any positive story, rewind back to the beginning of this webinar. We got some.
Exactly. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. And of course, is it okay, Liesl and Karen, if we include your contact information in the follow-up email?
Definitely.
Excellent. So please feel free to reach out if you guys have any extra questions. This is a community. You don't have to go through us. You can connect with each other, and we encourage you to do so. And yeah, we look forward to seeing more of your trips come to life. So yeah, see you at the next meetup.
Oh, can I ask one more question? When's your next Zoom?
We try to do it monthly. Actually, it's a really good point. What month are we in? We're in September. Probably sometime in October, but we're also looking to pull together a live meetup in Melbourne in November. So we are looking to do a Women in Travel meetup event. So stay tuned for more details on that. It's still kind of coming together, but we're quite excited to try to to actually do a physical one, because the Zoom ones are fun, but it would be really lovely to actually bring people together in the room.